Canada, the second largest nation on the planet. Comprising some 3.8 million square miles and spanning 6 time zones, Canada's territory is so vast that it encompasses numerous climates, from the towering peaks of the Rocky Mountains and the flat expanses of the prairies, to the temperate rainforests of the Pacific Northwest and the frozen tundras of the Arctic Circle. However, this diversity is not limited to its geography. It is also reflected in its people. Over the course of centuries and millennia, Canada has been shaped by individuals from all over the world, bringing with them a wide range of cultures, languages, and religions. Although these differences sometimes led to conflict, they more often fostered mutual understanding and cooperation, as diverse communities came together to build new identities in an entirely new nation. So, how did this country develop, from the arrival of First Nations peoples thousands of years ago to becoming one of the most multicultural and diverse places on Earth today? This is the history of Canada.
Canada is a land of immense size. It stretches across a whole continent, from the cold Atlantic Ocean in the east to the wide Pacific Ocean in the west. To the north, the Arctic ice whispers tales of survival and endurance. This land is filled with towering mountains that scrape the sky, vast forests that seem to go on forever, and great shining lakes that look like inland seas. It is a country of contrasts, of quiet snowy winters and bright warm summers. For thousands of years, this enormous and beautiful land was a quiet giant known only to the people who first called it home. They understood its seasons, its animals, and its secrets long before anyone else arrived. The first people of this land were the Indigenous peoples. They are not one single group, but many distinct nations, each with its own language, its own culture, and its own traditions. The First Nations, the Inuit, and the Métis have lived here for a time so long it is hard to imagine. They came across a land bridge from Asia thousands of years ago, following the great herds of animals. They learned to live in every part of this challenging country. From the skilled hunters of the plains who followed the buffalo to the coastal peoples who carved magnificent totem poles, they built rich and complex societies. Their connection to the land was deep. It was their provider, their teacher, and the very heart of their spiritual world. These first inhabitants developed incredible ways to thrive. In the icy north, the Inuit perfected the art of building igloos and hunting seals, mastering a landscape that others would find impossible. In the forests of the east, nations like the Haudenosaunee formed powerful confederacies and lived in longhouses, creating sophisticated systems of government. On the west coast, communities had great feasts called potlatches, where wealth was shared to show status and strengthen bonds. They passed down their histories not through written books, but through powerful oral stories, songs, and ceremonies. These traditions kept their cultures alive, carrying the wisdom of generations from one to the next, a living history whispered on the wind. The lives of the Indigenous peoples were woven into the fabric of the natural world. They understood the rhythms of the earth and respected the balance of nature. They used every part of the animals they hunted, ensuring nothing went to waste. They knew which plants could heal and which could provide food. This deep knowledge was not just for survival. It was a way of life, a philosophy that saw humans as part of a larger community of all living things. Their footprints were the very first on this soil, and their legacy is the foundation upon which the story of Canada is built, a story of resilience, adaptation, and a profound bond with the land itself. The story of Canada changed forever when tall ships with white sails appeared on the horizon. These ships brought explorers from Europe, men driven by the promise of riches, new trade routes, and undiscovered lands. Around the year 1000, Vikings from Scandinavia were likely the first to land, but their stay was short. The real wave of change began nearly 500 years later. In 1497, an Italian explorer named John Cabot, sailing for England, reached the shores of what is now Newfoundland. Soon after, French explorers like Jacques Cartier sailed up the mighty St. Lawrence River, claiming the land for the King of France and giving Canada its name from the Huron-Iroquois word Kanata, which meant village. These early European arrivals were followed by settlers. The French came first in large numbers. establishing settlements in what they called New France. Samuel de Champlain founded Quebec City in 1608, a fortress on a cliff overlooking the river, which became the heart of French Canada. These settlers, known as habitants, cleared the land and built farms along the St. Lawrence. At the same time, the English were establishing colonies to the south and were interested in the rich resources of the north, especially the valuable furs. A great rivalry grew between France and England. They fought over control of the land and the profitable fur trade, a conflict that would shape the future of the entire continent for decades to come. The fur trade became the engine of the economy. European traders and indigenous peoples formed complex relationships. The French voyageurs, tough and adventurous canoemen, paddled deep into the wilderness to trade goods like blankets, pots, and guns for beaver pelts, which were highly prized in Europe for making felt hats. This trade brought different cultures together, but it also brought conflict and new diseases that devastated indigenous communities. The competition between the French and the British eventually led to a great war. In 1759, a decisive battle was fought on the plains of Abraham outside Quebec City, where the British defeated the French, forever changing the destiny of Canada. After the war, the territory fell under British rule. However, the French-speaking population remained. To ensure peace, the British government passed the Quebec Act in 1774, which allowed the French Canadians to keep their language, their Catholic religion, and their civil laws. This was a very important step. It recognized that Canada would not be a country of just one culture or one language. It laid the groundwork for a nation that would be built by two founding European peoples, the French and the English. This dual heritage became a central part of Canada's identity, a challenging but unique foundation for the country that was slowly beginning to take shape. As the 19th century unfolded, the British colonies in North America began to think about their future. They were separate colonies, each with its own government, but they faced common challenges. They worried about being absorbed by the growing United States to the south. They also knew that by working together, they could build a stronger, more prosperous country. Leaders like John A. Macdonald and Georges-Étienne Cartier began to talk about a bold idea, uniting the colonies into a single, self-governing nation. This was a difficult dream, as each colony had its own interests, but the vision of a great country stretching across the continent was powerful and persuasive. This dream became a reality on July 1, 1867. On that day, 4 provinces, Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick, came together to form the Dominion of Canada. This event is called Confederation. It was the country's official birthday. John A. Macdonald became the first Prime Minister, and he had a grand vision for the new nation. He wanted Canada to grow, to reach from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Pacific. This was a massive undertaking. The vast western territories were largely empty of settlers, and connecting them to the east would be a monumental task that required courage, determination, and an iron will. To unite the country, Macdonald promised to build a railway. This was not just any railway. It would be a ribbon of steel that stretched for thousands of kilometers across mountains, prairies, and dense forests. The Canadian Pacific Railway was an incredible feat of engineering and a symbol of national ambition. It was built by thousands of workers, including many Chinese immigrants who faced terrible conditions and discrimination. The railway was essential. It brought new settlers to the west, allowed farmers to ship their wheat to markets in the east, and physically tied the new provinces of Manitoba and British Columbia to the rest of the country, fulfilling the national motto, Amari usque ad mare, or from sea to sea. The building of the country was not without its pain and conflict. As settlers moved west, they clashed with the Indigenous and Métis peoples who were already living there. The Métis, people of mixed Indigenous and European ancestry, led by the charismatic Louis Riel, fought to protect their land and their rights in 2 rebellions. Though these struggles were defeated, they highlighted the difficult and often unjust process of nation building. Over time, more provinces and territories joined Canada, filling in the map. The country grew through immigration, hard work, and difficult compromises, slowly forging a single identity from its many different parts. Canada's story in the 20th and 21st centuries is a story of people. After the country was connected by rail, waves of immigrants arrived from all over the world, seeking a new life and new opportunities. People came from Ukraine to farm the prairies, from Italy to build the cities, and from China to work in mines and on railways. Each group brought its own customs, its own food, and its own language, adding a new piece to the growing Canadian puzzle. The country was no longer just French and English. It was becoming a vibrant mix of cultures from every corner of the globe, creating a society that was truly diverse and multicultural. This diversity is celebrated in Canada today. If you walk down the street in a major city like Toronto, Vancouver, or Montreal, you will hear dozens of different languages being spoken. You will see temples, mosques, and churches standing side by side. The country officially adopted a policy of multiculturalism in 1971, which recognizes and values the contributions of all citizens, regardless of their background. This idea is central to the Canadian identity. It means that people are encouraged to keep their cultural heritage alive, creating what is often described not as a melting pot where everyone becomes the same, but as a mosaic, where each unique piece contributes to the beauty of the whole picture. Throughout its history, Canada has produced remarkable people who have made their mark on the world. Think of Terry Fox, the young man who, after losing a leg to cancer, tried to run across the entire country to raise money for cancer research. His journey of hope inspired millions. Think of Frederick Banting, the scientist who co-discovered insulin, a medical breakthrough that has saved countless lives. Or think of artists like Emily Carr, who painted the majestic forests and totem poles of the West Coast, and writers like Margaret Atwood, whose stories are read around the world. These individuals and many others reflect the spirit of perseverance, innovation, and creativity that defines the nation. In the end, Canada has become known around the world for being a peaceful, open, and welcoming country. It is a place that has learned, often through difficult lessons, to embrace its differences. While it still faces challenges, its guiding principles are tolerance, respect, and the belief that its diversity is its greatest strength. From the first footprints of the Indigenous peoples on the ancient land to the newest immigrants arriving at its airports, the story of Canada is the story of many peoples coming together. It is a nation built on the promise of a peaceful home, a welcoming neighbor, and a hopeful future for all who choose to call this vast and beautiful land their own.